Hello and welcome. This is Lita Downs from the Center for Faculty Excellence, and it is my honor to be here today to moderate the plenary session that is going to be delivered by Dr. Rita Shea. The plenary session today will address building a bigger tent, developing a research agenda for inclusion and impact. And as mentioned, Dr. Rita Shea will be presenting today's plenary, and we also have Dr. Raghu Korapati, who is here to introduce Dr. Shea. Welcome, Dr. Korapati.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And I am honored to introduce Dr. Rita Shea as an award-winning academician and practitioner in business and management. She teaches at Nova Southeastern University. She is exactly at Walden what we preach, scholar practitioner. She is an academic scholar and practices in the industry. Dr. Shea was a certified public accountant licensed in Pennsylvania. Prior to joining her career in academics, she has nearly 18 years of corporate consulting experience in famous companies like PricewaterhouseCoopers. She also served at leadership positions in American Red Cross and tourism industry and various financial services business. Currently, she teaches in various business and management courses, including organizational behavior, human resources management, and change management. In 2013, the State of New Jersey Policy Research Organization Foundation and the New Jersey Business Magazine recognized Dr. Shea's teaching for excellence in business school classroom. She is an award-winning faculty. Not only she teaches, she is heavily researches, explores change and challenge among individuals and organizations. Her recent research has been published in the Journal of Applied Research in Higher Education, Journal of Behavioral and Applied Management, and Human Resources Review. Dr. Shea frequently presents her research at national and international conferences, and the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and Atlantic have spotlighted Dr. Rita's research work. And today we have a unique topic, and we thank you for Dr. Rita for presenting. Thank you, Dr. Rita. Welcome to the plenary session.
And before we turn things over to Dr. Shea, just a quick recap of Adobe. The audio settings dial is in the lower right-hand corner where you can adjust your volume throughout today's plenary session. We also have a Q&A box, so please take a moment to enter any comments or questions that you have for Dr. Shea. We will be monitoring that Q&A box throughout the session. We also have Brandy, who's providing closed captioning for us. Finally, there's a View Options selection dial in the upper part of the screen. If you need to zoom in on a screen or exit full screen, you can do so by clicking on that. Without further ado, welcome Dr. Rita Shea. It's so great to have you on the line.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And thank you especially to Dr. Raghu Korapati and the College of Management and Technology for inviting me to be part of your research conference. Actually, because I see her on the line, when Dr. Holly Rick first reached out to me about participating today, I was definitely excited. I learned about Walden's doctoral programs in business a few years back when I was doing a study actually on non-traditional doctoral programs in business, and was really impressed with what you're doing. And then over the years, I've had the opportunity to work with and meet a lot of the folks from Walden, and always first class. And what's even better is many of you share a background similar to mine, where you are that scholar practitioner and second career academics, much like myself. So it's nice to be among folks like that, so which you don't always see at a lot of universities. And I feel very honored to be with you all here today. When I was asked to speak a little bit about management research and some of my own research, which I'll do. But also, as I understand, we've got, this is a diversified group in the conference today, and everybody from doctoral students through alumni, faculty, and in business, as well as other disciplines. So I wanted to make sure to talk about some things that are applicable to business and management research, but also that are probably going to be of interest for, and some common themes that you might find in other disciplines that you might be working in also. So, and their challenges that exist probably in higher ed in general. Full disclosure, some of what I'm going to talk about today is part of a study I'm working on with some colleagues from the UK and the northeastern US on some ideas to make business school research more impactful. And we're actually developing a model to help business schools be more sustainable, especially sustainable financially. So I'm glad to talk more about that study, especially maybe in the Q&A towards the end. And some of the things I'll probably stir the pot a little bit, especially for people who've had a more traditional academic background. And I do want to say up front, very much respect business school researchers, especially those of you who may have been doing this for many years. Amazing stuff that researchers do. But there's also areas where there's some challenges and opportunities, and I will try to talk about both. So put that little caveat, I only mean for positive change in the things that I'm talking about. And if there is anything controversial, you know what a better place to discuss it than a research conference. So with that in mind, I'm going to kind of begin my talk, good old Stephen Covey, since this is talking about management and management research. Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits, he says, begin with an end in mind. So the way I've kind of structured this talk, I'm going to do 3 goals I hope to achieve. I'm going to look at it from 2 different lenses, and I use the metaphor of the big tent, which I'll explain in a moment. So as far as my 3 goals, first goal is hopefully that you'll be inspired to see the benefits of all different types of scholarship. We'll talk about the more traditional, discipline-based applied research, but there's a lot of other types of research out there that we should be embracing. What's nice is Walden's kind of known for embracing more than just that traditional discipline, theory building research, a lot of applied research. So I see you guys as a leader in this trend. So hopefully that's going to be an easy benefit, that you'll see the benefits of. Second one is expanding our research conversations. And truly, I think we need to be more inclusive and broaden, the big tent with our research, and use our research more broadly than we have in the past. The third goal is hopefully that you will see is to hopefully something I'm passionate about is advocating for measures of impact above just citation counts and some of our traditional measures. And this is an area that I'll talk to in a minute or two. So on our next slide, you mind, Lita? The 2 lenses that I'm going to be looking at, and you might want to hit advance. And I apologize up front. I had some animations in here, so we may not be perfect on some of the animations, coming in. I'm going to look at this from 2 different lenses. For the past 7 years, I've actually been transitioning, especially with my business background. The schools I've been at have tapped me towards administrative roles. So I've been going in and out of administrative roles for the past few years. I actually just stepped down in January. I was overseeing our undergraduate business program and also helping my institution through a time of tremendous growth. And we were also trying to improve, get some higher level accreditations and things like that. So I was tapped to do that. Stepped down in January, perfect timing with the pandemic, back to a faculty role, which very much is where my heart is in teaching and research. And then at my prior institution, I also was in administrative roles my last 2 years as they went through some financial challenges. And also as a part of that, I was tapped by our president to help to write a new mission statement and do a strategic plan. And we also had a smaller group of us that got together to do some financial look at the school financially and identify opportunities to help make the school more sustainable financially. So I'm going to use that big kind of 10,000 foot level looking down at higher ed for some of my comments, but I also I'm a faculty member, and I've been a faculty member of my prior institution. I was tenured. Here we have something called continuing contracts. And I understand the challenges, and especially in this day and age of, trying to make sure you've got the right check marks to get that contract or get that tenure. And, that puts stress on people, and you tend to default into well-established systems that are known. So I'm going to talk from both levels, both the micro level and the macro level. The metaphor, and as I was putting my slides together, is kind of to put a theme overall to this, and the whole goal is to make a bigger tent. And to me, I kind of, as I was thinking through with the slides, I said, almost like the circus tent. I want that big, fun tent. To me, learning is fun. It should be a joyful journey. I said sometimes we forget that. And I'm guessing if you're on this call, you're similar to me. You like doing research and being able to, discover things. And that's what it should be. It should be fun. It should be kind of like going to the circus when you were a little kid. I always tell people I've got the best job in the world. I get to be a 2-year-old. I get asked why with my research questions, and better yet, somebody pays me to go find out why. It's, it's a great, place to be in your job. So it's been a great second career for me, and I want it to be a joyful journey. And hopefully, even if we talk about some tough subjects, it's to make that 10 bit better. So what I want to do first before I jump completely in is I want to go give a little bit of history and context. So kind of to go back to go forward. So thank you. Little history, so your Friday afternoon over cocktails at the end of the conference, if you need a little bit of trivia for the weekend. Universities started about 1,000 years ago. Business schools, not so much, about 140 years ago. Actually, next year will be 140 years. 1881, John Wharton, industrialist out of Philadelphia, gave money to University of Pennsylvania to found what is now the Wharton School of Business. And he wanted to help people develop and to develop good business people, be they work in the public or private sector. But business schools in general, where they really kind of got their footing and took off was during the 50s. The post-war economy was growing. They needed professional managers to help develop the US economy, look to business schools. 1959, kind of seminal moment for business research and management research. And that's when a report comes out by the Ford Foundation and Carnegie Foundation looking at business research. And to be honest with you, what they were talking about in that report, we still talk about today. So what is a business school? Is it truly doing real research? And we hear those kind of terminologies. Is it really, isn't it a trade school, the professional schools? It's not like the, more the hard sciences where, the kind of traditional research that's been done. But what they did, what those reports kind of came and they said, we really are in a bad state with business research. It isn't rigorous. It's not building theory. And again, things we hear about today. The difference with this report, not only did they kind of point the finger and said, I think you need to do it better, they actually gave recommendations and they put money towards it. Business schools recognizing that, wow, these guys are serious and they're giving us money, so we're good business people, so hopefully we've learned well, we're going to take advantage of this. We need to up our game. And that's what they did, is they ended up improving the business research area, putting that grant money towards it. And actually, if you think about it, we're the beneficiaries of today. If we're on this call, and especially those of us who work in academic environments, we were the ones that now, those business schools and all the top business schools now, they're doing rigorous discovery, theory building research that kind of works to make those business school better. And that's the way we judge our business schools. So, thinking about that as the beneficiary of this is, so what does that mean? Let me step into my own journey. If you can hit next for me. Thanks. I got the chance going into a PhD program, especially, as a second career. And I'm sure for many of you, it's exciting. You are that little kid going to the circus. I'm all excited. I get involved in my research, and we're taught to do rigorous research and doctoral programs. I mean, that's what they really are about. Is that, let's start with those big questions. I know I came in with the question in my case, starting out saying, a phenomenon that I had seen in my corporate career that I wanted to investigate as part of my dissertation. I even pulled it off the shelf. Again, you work hard for these things. Every once in a while, you want to show it off. So this is actually my dissertation. And what I was looking at is, it started with the question of two individuals that I'd seen in my corporate career. One, staying engaged and passionate for decades. Somebody else, same job, same organization, within a year, they're like, I'm out of here, forget this stuff. What makes that difference? And what happens in usually for most people, I know it was my experience, so I'm assuming for many others, and I know my classmates, so I'm assuming for many of you, you start with the big question, but to get the dissertation done, because the best dissertation is a done dissertation, you focus in on a subject. And so you got to get more and more focused to be able and to get it done. And again, the goal of discipline, of getting that graduate degree, learning the skills of research. That's what it's really about, to give you that admission ticket to the academy. So I narrowed it down. In my case, there was a theory that Amy Whiskey out of Yale, that actually her dissertation was out of University of Michigan in the positive psychology area, work orientation, job career calling. I went, why? Why do people have these 3 different types that Amy had identified? And went to go find out why. And spoiler alert, I mean, please feel free to read my JBM article or my dissertation if you care to, but spoiler alert, so you don't have to, is it's how we, the factor that I found most indicated was how we approach challenges. So falls right in line with stuff that I'm continuing to do. Basically, I found my little tent. So if you could hit the next slide. And many of us, we find our little tent. And especially if we go into an academic career, and again, I know a lot of you, you know, may not, but for those that have chosen that, for especially for the faculty on the line, you know, we do the dissertation and we try to get that first peer-reviewed journal article, because we've been acculturated, you know, we have been socialized into our little tent. I know the people who do work in my area. There's about 10 or 12 of us who tend to do that work. We know who each other are, at least by names or at a conference. And you know, and it's great. And again, people are doing some great work in those little tents. But also what has happened in the management research is we have focused very heavily on getting the peer-reviewed journal article and the citation counts and the better journal, what we call impact factors, and they become an important commodity, especially when we go to change jobs and things like that. So, you know, it's really hard. And again, I'll talk about discovery-based in a minute, but we find our little tent. And again, you know, we try to go for those gold stars, especially those of us, again, usually that have doctoral degrees and things, we're trying to get those gold stars. And we tend to talk to those in our area. And that's a bit challenging. I guess there's 2 issues that happen. One is, let's make sure we're still asking the big questions. I think a lot of us get focused down. And what's happening with a lot of the management research is that we need to make sure we're focusing back up and also changing and evolving as management changes and evolves. The other thing is what are we doing to measure our worth? Definitely important. Another thing I'll just put on top of it, I'm going to put that dean's hat on for a moment, is that the price of having this type of scholarship, it's very expensive to maintain. 2014, 2 Wharton professors, Carl Yulich and Christian Turwich, were looking at the economics of universities, and what they calculated is the average for one peer-reviewed journal article in a top journal in business cost approximately $400,000 on average. That's a huge cost for one peer-reviewed journal article. So there's a huge economic side of this that is important to remember, and why we have some challenges in management. So let's look, are there other areas that we can value? If you could hit the next slide, please. You know, the issue of expanding the tents and the different types of research, it's not new. Actually, the former president of the Carnegie Foundation for Advancement of Teaching, Ernest Boyer, he advocated this actually back in the 1990s. He called for us to relook at scholarship and look beyond that discovery-based scholarship. And if you could hit enter for me again, Lita. So obviously we have the discovery-based scholarship. He identified 4 different types. So discovery, new ideas, research building, application, taking those theories and that knowledge and applying it to institutions, in our case, business institutions, scholarship and teaching and learning. How do, you know, and that's something I've definitely gotten engaged in as I changed careers. I wanted to do this craft of teaching better. That got me involved. You go, wow, there's a whole research literature here to get our students to learn better, to make our institutions of higher education better. So important area of scholarship. And then what's become now a big thing, especially in the management disciplines, is the scholarship of integration. And I think it's also, again, broadened out to most types of scholarship today. Today's world, complex problems. We just have to turn on the news every single day. And it gets us, you know, we're dealing with a global pandemic. There's all kinds of issues to solve that. And one discipline can't do it. We have to look broader. You know, we're changing businesses today. And we have to be aware of that. What has actually happened, which I is probably a very good thing, because those of us who are management researchers or teach in management, we know diverse groups, diverse teams tend to make better decisions. They come up with more creative solutions to problems. Top journal editors, grant funding institutions, they are saying, that's sole authored. Not so much. We want to see collaborative, multidisciplinary teams doing research. So that's a big area within the research field. What is nice, especially someplace like in places like Walden, is your business school accreditor, ACBSP, the Accreditation Council for Business Schools and Programs, a lot of letters there. They value these type, and actually even in their guidance for accreditation, they use Boyer's model and say you should have all of these areas. So there are, accreditors that see that. Unfortunately, not all U.S. accreditors, as well as those that are overseas, have kind of come on to this bigger tent. So I think it's important that we continue to advocate for all these different types of research and value them equally. Good research should be good research regardless of the area that you're doing it in. So now, who are we talking to with our research? If you could hit the next slide for me. The most recent good data that I felt comfortable with was 2008 from the Census Bureau. We are in a privileged position. If you're on this call, chances are you are close to or have a doctoral degree. We're privileged. And actually, even though the rate of college educated people in the United States is going up percentage-wise, we're still only 1 out of every 5 people in the US has a bachelor's degree. Sometimes we forget, I know I forget about that. We forget about that. 1 out of every 10 has a master's degree. And actually, we're 2%ers. Only 2% have doctoral degrees in all fields. So very small segment of the population that has graduate level. What this means, especially for management and business researchers, is that for most of the people working today, including those business owners and managers that we're trying to say, oh, we've got a better mousetrap to make your business better, they're never going to be reading our PRJs. If they did, I think they might even struggle. I know I struggle at times to understand some of the things that are in there. They're going to struggle with it even more. And because of this, there seems to be this disconnect between the work we're doing and those that maybe should be using our research work, and talking to each other. And actually, there's a lot of critiques on business and management research today. So much so, and especially with this high cost of education, that people are questioning the value of our research. So if you could go to the next slide, please. I want to give you some of those critiques that are out there today. And this is where our main challenges are with research, with management research. I'm going to give you 2 high-profile examples of some of those critiques that are out there. These are coming from the Academy of Management, which is the leading research organization for management scholars. And what they, in 2017, recognizing there were problems, especially around the issue of impact and where people were putting their value. Usha Haley was tasked with leading on behalf of the board a group that put out a white paper talking about impact and how we're using business research. And there's one line in this report that I've told Usha, I use it all the time, so that she has. And to me, it summarizes the entire report and the state of management, the challenges in management research today. And I'll just read it very quickly. Academic and institutional reliance on impact factors has led to an overemphasis on narrowly focused and funneled research that may be of interest to other management academics, but not external constituencies. Ouch. And actually, Academy of Management Learning and Education, one of their journals, had a March 2020 issue talking about issues with management research. And Dennis Turish has an article that, if you are brave enough as an academic to read, he gives some pretty hard truths. And I just pulled out a couple, a line or two from his article. He talks about, increasingly, we build barricades to keep our readers out rather than open doors to invite them in. And he talks about how we neglect really important issues in favor of bite-sized chunks of research that are more likely to find quick publication in leading journals rather than advanced knowledge. I mean, this is tough critiques, but you know what? This isn't new, and it isn't exclusive for business. I don't know if anybody's read the book, Richard Arum and Rocha's book called Academically Adrift, and they were addressing the limited learning that's happening on college campuses. And one of the areas that they talk about what's causing that is this narrow research focus and this desire to, what we're rewarded on. So it's not new, but it is becoming, the voices are becoming louder for that. So I gave the bad news. Let me give you some things or some ideas that we can maybe discuss to try to fix this. And if you can hit the next slide, I appreciate it. Actually, Europe is ahead of us in this. Usually we look at the US and saying that they're the leader in higher education initiatives, but Europe has really been doing this, and through their kind of top accreditor, which is the EQUIS accreditation that some of you may have heard, EFMD Global, they've even, for the better part of 2 decades, has actually put as their process. So if you want to be accredited or reaccredited under EQUIS, you have to talk about the nature and extent of impact that the business school has. And they talk about a broad range of stakeholders. And so they've been doing that for many, many years. What they did to kind of put some extra on that, to kind of bring that, amplify that impact that we need to look broader than just ourselves and internally, is they did a joint venture. And starting in 2014, they now have the schools that are pursuing any of the EFMD accreditations can also get this impact certification. And so far, only about 14 schools have the last I checked a month or 2 ago, had reached that bar. So it's still new, but I think it does have the ability to help us game change here of what we're going to look at for management education. They put out 120 indicators, 7 different dimensions of impact, but they look, not only at the research, but the financial, the regional impact that a business school has, societal impact on the image of the region that the school is helping to promote. So it's quite a framework that makes schools accountable for producing really, impactful research for a broad range of constituencies, not just the research community. What gets rewarded gets done is always a current, a mantra we talk about a lot in business. And what the UK has started, and we're also seeing it with grant funders even in the US our Department of Education in the various states and at the federal level hasn't done this here, but over in the UK and in New Zealand, what they do is they give you a baseline of funding for your public institutions. If you want additional funding, public or private, you have to make a case for it. Every 5 years, those schools, they actually fight for research funding depending on the cases that they make for impact. So it really does make you think much more broadly, because people who are outside of the academy are making these decisions. Actually, the U.S. National Science Foundation in the States, who is a large grant funder for many research projects here, they put in something called the broader impact. So not only do you have to have a good idea and a good research plan, but you also have to talk about the benefit to society and how your research will contribute to specific societal outcomes, and you have to identify those in your proposal for it to even be considered. So it's important for us, to look more broadly, and part of it is, how do we measure this? How do we measure impact? How do we go beyond those citations and those impact factors? And if you could hit the next chart for me. Gave you a little chart here, and what it is talking about what are the different ways we can communicate our research for each of the 4 different areas that Boyer identified. What are the different activities we can do that go beyond those peer-reviewed journals and the scholarly books and things like that, and then aligning a measurement to that, and with the goal, hopefully, that we will think more broadly and we will reward more broadly and value more broadly all different types of impact. So I think it's very important to be able to expand that tent to be able to do this. So how do we expand that tent? And to give you kind of an example, maybe for those of you who are thinking about this, going, how do I do this? And how do I go beyond? If you could hit the next slide for me. This is just something, kind of just an idea of what, for folks just to be able to look at the kind of the 4 areas of scholarship and saying, how can we hit these different areas? And I think it is, starting with that, that discovery-based scholarship and those great ideas you've come up with and worked hard and tried to show, with good rigor that you've got, something really good here, and you do it in that peer review article. But then can you convert it into maybe a case study or some kind of learning module for your classes to take that research and move it into learning modules? University of Michigan in their positive psychology area has been very good about that in doing teaching tools. Then move on, podcasts, TED Talks. I'm a New York Times, I'm a New Yorker, so I love the Sunday New York Times. I still read old school newspaper. Their review section, great place where people get their research and tie it to current events and talk about, here's what the research says and here's how it might help us do something better in the future. But even op-eds at a local level, is there something happening locally? I had done a study on faculty tenure, and there was actually a California law that had changed, and that New York Times had an article on. I was able to bring what we found in that article in our research into what was happening in California to be able to advocate about changes to tenure for K through 12. And it ends up getting published and got a lot of people calling me that would have never even ever thought, they never even knew I did research in the area, and said, oh, I saw this and I saw your ideas and things like that. Some agreed with it, some didn't, which is, what happens. But then also consulting agreements. Let's use that, whether it's executive ed, it's doing consulting projects, and hopefully what that becomes is a positive, virtuous cycle that, if we do more partnerships with business and research, putting them together and talking to each other, I think they're going to help to make our next research project even richer and probably more relevant. And again, we hopefully help them to do some good things in what they're doing. So I think there's ways we can do that. What is it going to take? I know we're going to need some new skills. If you could hit the next slide, I'll go very quickly on this for sake of time. But on the individual, find your voice, find what fuels your passion, that you can help to fuel passions for others. I think more important than ever, let's broaden out. Let's pursue important questions. Let's make sure that those big tents we started with, that we got all excited about on our journey, let's make sure we're going back to those big tents and those big questions. And also if those questions change, let's make sure we're changing with it. I think we also need to develop on the individual level some new communication skills, social media, again, these new technologies, Twittering, LinkedIn, those are avenues for us to get our research out there, even the traditional research. We need to refocus it, and maybe we need to change our doctoral programs for that. As far as our institutions, guess we can't do this on our own. We need leadership that's willing to make changes to our reward systems, to change our culture so that we do have a more inclusive, a bigger tent. Again, those collaborations, I think we need structures that allow us to get, and a lot of us, especially as we move further and further in our academic career, we seem to move farther away from our business careers, making sure that there's ways we can keep those relationships alive. Interdisciplinary teaching and research, definitely, make sure that we've got the systems and the processes that allow us to do that. And, that is going to mean some new career models for academics to be able to do that. And I definitely realize this is, definitely some pie in the sky. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take probably a generation to make a lot of these dynamic changes, but hopefully we're starting there. Just to finish up, my last slide, let's keep expanding this research tent. Let's celebrate scholarly diversity. Let's celebrate our colleagues who are doing all different types of diversity. Let's amplify the communication so we are talking to a much bigger tent of people outside of the academy. And then hopefully I've encouraged you that impact is important, impact beyond just, impact factors and citation counts, that there's a lot of other things that we should be doing and measuring and rewarding for impact. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm glad to take questions.
Thank you.
And please enter any questions or comments that you have in the Q&A area. Whoops, and I'm sorry, my mic was turned up. Please enter any questions or comments you may have in the Q&A area. We have about 5 more minutes together, so if you have any.
So we have one comment here.
Thank you, Sally.
This is the best presentation I have heard all day. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm sure there's a lot of great ones out there, but thank you, Sandy. I really appreciate it. So,
So here is a question. What do you recommend as a strategy for new researchers to build their own tent?
Great question. I think, again, one, helping them to find their voice. What is it that fuels their passion? I think once they do that, I think thinking through what do I do with these research projects? And again, I think for new researchers, depending on where they're going, if they're going to go into a more traditional academic career, you know what, you're going to need some check marks to the PRJs. But I think even while you're writing, I think it makes sense to say, you know what, maybe there's other avenues for me to get my word out. And to do things. I mean, being able to participate in different areas. And I think that where I talked about taking that peer-reviewed journal article, you know what? Go apply for a TED Talk. You never know. I got lucky. I applied for one and I ended up getting accepted at a TEDx talk. Being able to do those things, I think encouraging them to find different avenues where they can find people to talk to. I think also business, not being afraid to talk to people about their research regardless of the audience. And I think especially for new researchers, sometimes you go, oh, I can't go in front of that business group. You're an expert in your area, and you'll learn from them. Even if you say something that they don't agree with, you're going to learn from that. So I think it's allowing them the freedom and encouraging them to do that. So.
Thank you. Again, you got some positive comments here. Great presentation.
Thanks all.
Good information.
Thank you.
And someone said excellent presentation. I have one small question. You said, it takes $400,000 cost to have one article peer-reviewed, published in a top-tier journal. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, this is the way their methodology, if they took it, is they said, for a top tier journal, you're looking at, and I'll say they use the Wharton salaries, so it might be a little escalated, but they also said only having two people on the publication. It takes the better part of, I think 3/4 of a year plus is what they used. And you're spending probably almost half your time doing that, probably for 3/4 of a year. And I think that's probably a fairly reasonable, every bit of a reasonable estimate for a top tier journal. And when you multiply by the salaries with benefits, just that basic number, you're talking $400,000.
Yeah.
And
also
again,
including the reviewer's time and the feedback and back and forth.
Yeah, they didn't even include that. So again, and we all do that saying it's our volunteer time, but really that's a cost to our university for us. And it's something that, again, we help out for those journals because we aspire to those journals. So yeah, it's probably even higher. So absolutely.
Again, we got a couple of more comments. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was going to say, somebody, I'm looking, Dr. Vicky, yes, publishers are there to support book deals, even for new PhDs. I will tell you, especially, I'll say new PhDs, if they're interested in teaching and learning, or they've got some interesting things to say, getting involved. McGraw, I've worked with Pearson and McGraw-Hill on, actually we did a session at the Academy. This was the 3rd year we did it, talking about impact, and they are, very open to talking to people, even if you just want to do a module on a one area for one of the classic textbooks. So if there's an area that, say human resource management, and you have somebody that's doing research in compensation, do they have a good exercise, or are they willing to write chapters and all for textbooks? And now it's learning systems. So are you willing to do a module on their learning system? There's a lot of support for that, which is great for new PhDs that are looking and saying, I want to be able to do textbooks and things. It's a good way for them to get the foot in the door with the major publishing houses. But they're very open to that. So if your PhD students are going to the Academy, and if they haven't, I know scholarship of teaching and learning side of it, look at management, the MED division, and look for impact. I think we're going to be asked to do it again this year, but we do bring book publishers in, and they're very open to talking to anybody about that. Again, getting those little modules, and then you kind of cut your teeth there for bigger projects. And if they know you do good work, they're going to be more open to that. So if they've got an idea.
We have one question. What are some of the measures of impact that this European organization includes on measuring?
Yeah, it's a pretty broad-based area. Let me do this. So I'm not doing it. It's late on a Friday, and it's my last day of class. So I want to make sure I'm looking. I'm reading it versus doing it from memory. They have 120 indicators. There's 7 dimensions. Their 7 dimensions are financial. So they look at the financial impact that the school is having. The educational impact. So are they having students, learning and getting good citizens? Business development, how is the school helping with that? The intellectual development, so that's kind of your classic research. Regional, societal, and the impact how the school is impacting the image of the region. So when you've got, say, that small area, but you've got a great school there that's helping the whole region to be, much better. So that's their 7. And again, they've got a lot of different measures beyond that. So for each one of those measures, about 15 different measures that they use. So very broad-based. But
thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
I think that's all the time we have. So thank you again for coming to us and speaking to us such a unique topic in
Thank you.
management.
Thank you very much. And yeah, and that's the beginning of our model that we have that we're working on for, and that we did present at Academy this year. So thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you to our presenter, Dr. Rita Shea. We really appreciate it. And just those of you on the line, just so you know, there will be a copy of this placed onto ScholarWorks. It should be there by beginning of November. So if you missed any part or you wanted to re-watch any part, it will be available. Thank you so much, and hopefully you can all go to the app and check out the next session going on that will be starting at the top of the hour. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.